I am Fate. I talk about rent-a-girlfriend stuff. Go check out the rest of my channel if you're interested. I mostly cover the manga, but today we're looking at some news in relation to the anime. Okay, so there was some new rent-a-girlfriend news for season 4. This news came from DMM TV's broadcast for Anime Japan 2025. As you can see from this image here, there are many other anime that were showcased here, but our focus today is of course Rent-a-Girlfriend. So what new information was shared here? Well, the obvious one was there was a new preview trailer that we can get to watch. We actually finally see footage of the season and what it looks like. But before we get into that, there's actually a few other details I really wanted to touch on that I think many people probably didn't notice or didn't know about because, you know, maybe you don't speak Japanese or certain things like that. First off, if we go to the actual event itself, you'll notice that when we start playing this, this music right here is actually Kazuya's theme. It's Kazuya's theme from the anime, and it's the first song you can actually listen to from the soundtrack after the special musicals they made for each of the individual female characters. And if you translate the title of the theme, it says, "The Boyfriend Who Likes Aquariums." As you can kind of tell from the vibe, it's a very aquarium-themed song. So it's super fitting that they do a Hawaiian remix of the song, especially considering, like, again, like Kazuya is a character who very much enjoys marine life, so it's very clever of them to put his particular song and then remix it into a Hawaiian theme style that feels very relaxing and kind of vibing, you know? If we get into the actual event itself, most of it is a questionnaire where it has the voice actor for Kazuya, Shunhori, the voice actress for Chizuru, Sora Mamamiya, or as her fans and even some of her coworkers like to call her, Tenchun, because it's like an abbreviation from her name, Ten's in there or something like that. And finally, the voice actress for Ruka, only one I have a problem where I tend to forget her name. I know her first name is Nao, it's Nao, Nao Taoyama. Now, most of this is just a questionnaire. They're just asking them questions in relation to things. I personally felt very bored for the first 20 minutes where just pretty much nothing was going on, nothing particularly interesting was being said or shared. Sometimes they had some interesting interactions, but again, I don't speak Japanese, so I don't know the exact things they're saying. So I asked a few of my Japanese friends to tell me if there was anything in particular that was said. And both of them said something pretty similar. So after they show the preview, the cast talks about how Aoi Yuki, the voice actress for Mami, had such a terrifying performance that they couldn't help but laugh. They like, you know, the giggle nervously kind of thing, or like it's so intense you start laughing. That's the kind of vibe they were kind of getting. And they also pointed out how this is kind of the Mami season, if you will. And for those who have read the manga, no shit, of course it is. It's very much a Mami kind of focused season centered arc, and the fact that Aoi Yuki is so fucking scary to listen to that they start laughing, and they describe it as it felt more like a suspense anime rather than a rom-com is honestly perfect. I really love that. This is something Reiji even described when writing the Hawaiians arc, where he literally says it definitely felt more like he was writing something that was building the tension and the suspense because of the brewing conflict in the background that Mami essentially hold the guns to, that she can fire off at any time that she wanted to. Trying my best not to spoil everything. For those who have seen season 2, you remember when Mami runs into Chizuru in the train, and then she asks Chizuru like, "Oh, are you still seeing him?" And Chizuru says no, and then later we see Mami essentially plotting in the background, following Nagomi on her Twitter, and then later meeting Nagomi in person and seemingly being in contact with her. Well, this is where it's all gonna finally kick into gear. In the manga, this actually took almost 90 to 100 chapters to come full circle, because the last chapter we see Mami, I believe, is chapter 78 or 77, and she comes back in chapter 167. So nearly 100 chapters for this thing to fully kick into gear. So Mami's disappearance at the time and then suddenly coming back felt a lot more intense in the manga because she'd been gone for literal years. She was just literally not there for actual straight up years. There was only ever nods to her, ever little tiny references to her, akin to like a Sumi thing where Sumi disappears for a while and then she comes back, you know, but Mami disappeared for much longer, and then when she comes back, it's very explosive, very sudden, and in a lot of ways very invasive. So Mami's character being the center here is kind of important, and she's so much the center in this arc that when they showed the trailer, right after showing the trailer, they actually showed a new art piece of Mami. The first one we saw was of Chizuru at the train station, clearly during spring, as you can see the sakura flowers behind her. They'd love to do this particular imagery with Chizuru. This isn't the first time they've done it. For example, when the season 1 Blu-ray released, she also had sakura flowers behind her. Again, sakura flowers very much symbolize new beginnings, rebirth, and a lot of these themes that actually very much directly connect to Chizuru in this arc. So that being present there for Chizuru is very interesting. In contrast, you have Mami crouching down in the rain holding an umbrella. You see her bag behind her, and behind her, in contrast to Chizuru, you see hydrangeas. Hydrangeas are very much flowers of the rain. The two types of hydrangeas we see are purple and blue, both of which have a very particular meaning. So them being here is kind of interesting. Another interesting note that I really wanted to point out here is that these were drawn by Kana Hirayama, the character designer for the anime of Rent a Girlfriend, but she's also the character designer and chief animation director of Oshinoko, for those who have seen that show. And interestingly, right at the same exact time that Rent a Girlfriend was having its event, Oshinoko was also having an event. And if you see, this is an art piece also drawn by Kana Hirayama, which also has the exact same motif Mami has, where it's rain and it's a see-through umbrella of the character standing. So this is pretty funny, but interestingly, Kana Hirayama actually talked about this, where she says, for some reason, the umbrella visuals happened to just overlap, but I was drawing what I had been ordered to draw. So it was really just a coincidence. I was thinking it must be really hard to draw an umbrella ×2. Now, personally for me, and this is a bit of a spoiler for the manga, this will be something interesting for those who have caught up with the manga. So if you don't want any spoilers, just skip this section. There'll be a timestamp. This is pretty interesting release time, all things considered, considering like right now in the manga, there's literally the theme of hydrangeas, where Chizuru is literally wearing hydrangeas on her arms, and Kazuya straight up mentions hydrangeas, and then the theme of rain literally being at play. So I think it's kind of interesting that this happens to show up right at the same time that the manga is literally dealing with themes of rain and hydrangeas. Pretty perfectly timed, if you ask me. I know Kana was ordered to draw this, but at the same time, it's clear she maybe took inspiration from that, as well as maybe she was actually ordered to draw this specific kind of feel. Okay, so for those people who want to come back, welcome back now. So these two images directly very much connect to this idea of going on a trip. You're definitely feeling this vibe of Mami's going on some sort of trip with someone and she's looking at them in the same way as Chizuru is going on a trip with someone and she's looking at them. Kana loves to draw Mami with green, which really kind of works for her. I think green is a very interesting color that matches with Mami. Reiji tends to draw her usually with a kind of blue and whitish, and her main colors are black, gold, and yellow. But Kana goes with a slightly different approach, and I do think it works. It is unfortunate though that the anime will, in my opinion, never look this fucking amazing. Now, before we get into the trailer, Now also posted some stuff on Twitter that I just kind of wanted to share. She says, Tenchan shows off her talent in the 4th season of Rent a Girlfriend. We were in the same dressing room. Thank you to everyone for trying hard to look back on our reactions. The new anime starts in July. The Hawaii's arc is full of swimsuits and is full of excitement, but it's actually a very suspenseful story. So again, this is something very similar to what they said in the actual event itself. And here's a picture of the trio standing together in front of the event wearing little Hawaii little shaped things on their necks. Yeah, of course they are. But okay, finally, let's get into the trailer. I'll have a link for this down below if you're interested in seeing it yourself, but there are a few interesting things that we want to talk about. Now, okay, I don't want to completely spoil this for people, so there'll be this immediate section where to kind of talk about the preview, and then from there we'll get into some of the actual discussions of some of the actual spoiler related things. So for now, the first things I really want to point out is the visuals. They do look a little better than I expected. There seems to be a little bit more animation. I'm gonna let them play in the background as I talk. However, there is still clearly some composition issues. You can literally see the composition issues in just looking at it. There's a strange lack of depth. The lines look blurry and kind of messy. There's a weird sense of lack of cleanliness to the line work and the presentation, despite the fact that Kana Hariyama is clearly somewhat involved in this, as the characters seem to be a little more in model just from looking at it. However, you can also feel some of the season 3 in there. This is something I was kind of initially very much worried about, and some of these worries are somewhat here to a degree, despite the fact that we're getting 2 cores, which means 24 episodes. Maybe it didn't have nearly as much time, despite the fact that it had some of its staff again, and you can see that in various ways. Like look at like Sumi's arms, how she looks, the presentation. It doesn't look very clean, and I think that's reflective of the fact that there, unfortunately, despite the fact that we have 24 episodes, there's still a bit of a rush. There's still a bit of a rush. You can see some of the weird composition, some of the weird presentation and the characters. However, cases like this is clearly Kana Hariyama's work, and you can literally see it in the art. You can see that it's clearly her. These are very much real pictures. You could tell these are real pictures of the actual place. They go to an actual place called Hawaiians in Japan, which is very much inspired by actual Hawaii. They don't actually go to Hawaii. They go to a place called Hawaiians. This is clearly an image they took and then they drew over it, trying to mimic the feel of the manga, where Reiji often does this exact thing. He takes a picture of an actual place, puts a filter over it, and then draws over those things. That's why they look a certain way. You can see in cases like this where some of the way the characters look, the models, the way that they look, something about it just doesn't look super clean. However, again, the models do look a little cleaner, which is great. This is something I do particularly kind of like, and of course we have Mami there. Now let's talk about some of the things that are actually said in the trailer. Spoilers for anyone who doesn't want to know what the trailer said. If you want to just go in completely blind, then yeah, this is not for you. So in English, Chizuru says here, "Do you have feelings for me?" This scene, so this is, oh my god, where do I begin with this? This is actually a body pillow that they made ages ago. You can tell it's literally the exact goddamn same. This was drawn by Kana Hirayama, and all they did was just swap out the swimsuit Chizuru is wearing with the swimsuit she was wearing the first time they went to the beach. That original design with the pink and the red. Yeah, that's literally it. So in some ways, this is kind of lazy, in my opinion. This is a little bit lazy. I'm not particularly surprised. When it zooms in, I will say, like, it has like that weird blur effect. Then Kazuya hugs it, and then it looks a little cleaner. So this, spoilers from the manga a little bit here. This is not in the manga. This is not a real thing. This, I believe, is a nod to chapter 188, where Kazuya imagines Chizuru in a swimsuit, but he doesn't imagine her on a weird body pillow that he hugs. He just imagines her in a white swimsuit, because this is actually a direct reference to the beach arc, where he imagines Mami in a white swimsuit at the time. And for those who read the manga, when Kazuya and Chizuru and everyone goes to Hawaiians, Mami literally wears a white swimsuit. So it's kind of like meant to be a reversal of those events intentionally. So yeah, this is an extra scene that they clearly added in. So this scene is from chapter 175, where Mami runs into Kazuya at school. She says, "Ah, Kazu-kun." This is from chapter 168, I believe, where Kazuya goes to work and Ruka is dressed in a maid outfit, and she says, "Welcome back, Master-kun." Yeah, Master. This is actually not an actual thing. This one's weird. So this is a chapter cover. This is a chapter cover. It's not an actual thing in the manga. So I don't know why that's there. This one is an interesting one. It's like fully animated and everything, but I don't know why it's there because it's not in the manga. So it doesn't make any sense. It's just a chapter cover. Now for this one's pretty cute. This is also from chapter 168. It's the same exact chapter as the one Kazuya runs into Ruka. However, the thing I want to point out here is the Endless 8 shirt Minnie is wearing. Endless 8, for those who don't know, is an arc in Haruhi Suzumiya where they play the same exact episode 8 times. the same exact episode with slight differences each time, and it's because the characters are stuck in a literal time loop. Now, what's interesting here is that usually whenever the anime shows mini shirts, they usually change something about them. So they'll do like a reverse reference, or they'll just have her say something else on the shirt. But here, it's actually straight up faithful to the manga. This is literally what her shirt says on the manga. She's wearing an Endless 8 shirt. There's a later part of the manga where she wears it again, and it's meant to be a nod to not only how Minnie is thinking, but also how the things in the manga are literally happening, where the characters feel like they're literally stuck in a loop, and the stagnation within the manga is an intentional narrative theme that the characters are literally trying to break out of their stagnation. This is kind of the arc where the characters essentially try to break out of their stagnation, and it shows the real difficulties of that, because the real difficulties of transforming as a person, it's how you deal with after the fact that you've transformed. And this is where this arc really tackles that idea of how the characters deal with the idea of transforming, where they're met with the belief that, like, was it all for nothing? Was it all for something? Was your initial path that you took from the beginning of the series worth anything, or did it not matter at all? And this is that question. There's a lot of heavy themes in this arc, including grief, existentialism, a lot of heavy topics. Again, this series is, when you watch it from the anime's perspective, it's very, very silly, and it seems like it's not very deep at all. But if you actually pay attention to some of the things the anime shows, if you actually read the manga in earnest, there's a lot of deep and complicated themes at play that I think are handled extremely well if you actually engage with them and don't just judge them at surface level. So with that said, the Endless 8 reference in the manga is exactly the same. It's really cool that they actually depict the exact same thing. So this is a delusion scene where Kazuya is imagining Chizuru. Right here it reads, he forgot what this part looks like, and this part is supposed to be literally shaded out. So that's what this says right here. So this is a part where Nagomi is talking. It's from chapter 185 or 186, where she's explaining how the Kinoshita family has a tradition of going to Hawaiians every year. Now, I won't spoil the exact details of the scene just completely for those who are curious, but that's what Nagomi is saying here. She describes that it's a normal thing that they usually go to. If you're wondering why Nagomi gets pissed here, I'm not quite sure where this scene comes from, but we'll have to get back to that. Then they show Chizuru in her swimsuit. Interesting note about this swimsuit, by the way. So this is the design that is on the volume cover of the manga. In the manga itself, it doesn't actually have this design because this design was actually hard to do in the manga. So I don't know how they are going to handle it in the anime. Maybe they just created a pattern and they can just slap the pattern onto the swimsuit and boom, good to go. But in the manga, this was actually really hard to do. And so Reiji only had it be blue color with a white lace pattern. But as you can see from the volume cover, I'll probably have it put on here. It matches this pattern exactly. And this is of course the same exact pattern from the body pillow that they have on here. Ruka is very much the same way, but Ruka's is much simpler. Ruka is just one color up top, and then there's a design on her bottom. This is actually from a different scene, and we see her smile. This is from chapter 190.
Kanojo Okarishimasu 4期 この旅行で俺は水原に告白する
And then Kazuya in this scene says, I'm going to confess my feelings to Mizuhara, this time for sure. And then we see this scene. So this scene, being the last thing that we see in this trailer, is from chapter 211. And this is, again, one of those scenes where you can kind of see some of the composition issues. Like, look at how Kazuya is walking. Look at how he's presented. It looks a little stinted, a little awkward. This scene is from chapter 192 or 93. It looks a little different from this, but it's clear Kana also drew this. So the last thing I wanted to point out is that the last chapter that we see is chapter 211. The first chapter of this arc is chapter 168 or 167. And then we're gonna get to chapter 211 in the first core, which might make some sense. I think maybe a stopping point, if that's the pacing that we're going with. Maybe a stopping point would be this scene, and then we transition into the second core. We don't know how long the two cores are, like where one's going to stop and where the other's going to start, so we can't really guess. Some people made the assumption that the voice actors said it would all cover Hawaiians, but I talked to some Japanese friends. They said this is not accurate. This is not true. They never said this. They just said there would be a lot of swimsuits and it's going to be exciting and shit like that. With that said, right here, there's actually a few different credits here. One of those people is this person right here, who will be the new 2D art director for the series. I believe I mentioned in my last video, if you're interested, go check it out, where they had a few people that were different. One of them was, I believe, the art director. So they said there, the 4th season onwards, I'll be participating as the main staff member and the 2D art director. Thank you for your cooperation. So go give this person some support, go say best of luck, stuff like that. Just go support them, help them out. Now, most of the information on this is exactly the same as the stuff we've seen before. At the moment, we don't know if Kana Hirayama is the chief animation director. And here's an important detail that I actually found out from Kana herself, where she says, I also drew the preview, however, it mentions that she was being supervised. This is kind of important. It means she's not in the supervising position, she's being supervised. So that means while she is involved in this season, very clearly so, she might not be in the chief animation director position like she was in season 1 and season 2. But at the moment, we actually don't have anybody for chief animation director listed whatsoever. If you go to the website, it still says Kana Hirayama is just the character designer of the anime. And while we can clearly see she's involved and there seems to be a little bit more consistency with the models here, it's at the very least clear there are some differences in how the characters look in certain scenes. Now, Kana Hirayama is also working on Oshinoko. However, Oshinoko comes out next year, so there's plenty of time until it releases, and I think that means that won't really get in the way of her schedule working on this series. I don't think Kana's going to be tugged between Kanokari and Oshinoko. Not to mention, season 4 actually took some time after season 3 before being announced. One reoccurring pattern that was happening was that season 2 and season 3 were both announced right as the respective season of that year ended. However, season 4 was not. In fact, it went silent for a little bit and then it was announced, telling me that they actually had some time to plan some stuff and get ready for it. So at the very least, you can kind of see some of that in some of the animation. While we have line work somewhat lacking in certain places, it at the very least looks a lot cleaner than it did before, with the models being a little bit more consistent in the actual preview that we saw. Granted, we need more footage to know for sure. I do want to preface though, these aren't my final thoughts. The first time I saw the trailer, I actually thought it was pretty good. I thought it was actually like, this is a lot better than I expected. The colors pop out a little more, it seems a little cleaner, but I do worry a little bit, you know? So in that same regard, let's not forget, this is just a trailer. This is literally just a teaser and we've only seen snippets of it. This isn't the final product, it's not out yet. So when it does come out, I'll decide then like how I feel about it, but you decide for yourself, okay? You figure out how you feel about it. For now, I think it's okay. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's much better than I expected, and that's made me somewhat hopeful for what's to come, that it might actually be good, you know? With that said, personally, I'm excited. I'm excited to see what they do for season 4. On the other hand, I wanted to point out to this user where they mentioned something interesting. So this is an art book that Kana made a while back that she sold at Comiket, and one of the art pieces in there is, as you can see, Chizuru in the swimsuit and the hairstyle from Hawaiians. And this person says, the Chizuru that Hirayama-san drew at Comiket has finally come to life. I've been waiting for this ever since I saw it. And goddamn, Kana. Girl's swinging. She knows how to draw Chizuru so well. Like I love Kana's design of Chizuru. It's so good. For any of you who have kept up with my channel, you know I like glaze the ever living shit out of Kana. I love her. She's so great. She even loves the series as much as we do. Like she's actually a massive fan of the story and really enjoys it. Now, an interesting thing did happen with this that I kind of just noticed off the top of my head while scrolling through Twitter. I noticed a lot of posts from Kana where she was talking about the event and sharing some of her thoughts here and there. Kana shared a lot about the event and how she was watching the Oshinoko event and the Kanokari event at the same time because she had 2 monitors. However, Reiji was surprisingly absent, and only the day after did he retweet the Shiunji family, and then just a little bit after that did he finally retweet the preview for this series. This was a little weird for me initially. However, this isn't because he doesn't care about the anime or it's not important to him. Rather, the answer is pretty clear if you just scroll through his Twitter a little bit, like for the past 2 weeks or 3 weeks or so. And the reason becomes extremely clear. It's the Shiunji family, which releases on April 8th. I've mentioned it a few times in this video. If you go through Reiji's Twitter, he's been actively promoting the anime for that series, even making art for it to promote it in the manga through the Blu-rays, and they're even having collaboration events with the goddamn train station that the series takes place at. Yeah, you can kind of see that his focus has been that series. It could also be the fact that it's much closer to release than the other one, with a lot of collaborations currently happening for the series, so that could be the other reason. Like, Rent a Girlfriend right now isn't nearly as big a deal as Shiunji Family, which releases literally next week. He also retweeted the special exhibition that actually doesn't have any way you can watch it outside Japan right now, so it seems like you actually have to be there. So yeah, maybe the fact that Shiunji Family is so much closer is probably the reason Reiji is much more focused on it. Also, it's pretty funny seeing these designs here because they remind me a lot of the Amazing Digital Circus, which, by the way, the voice actress for Chizuru in the dub actually plays the main character in that show. Heck, the dude even made his first ever dakamakaras, aka body pillows. Like, Reiji actually made some for the Shiunji family, so goddamn alright. I do think it's kind of crazy that Reiji has been like putting a lot of effort into making these things for the Shiunji family, which shows how busy he is. On top of writing both it and the Kanokari manga without breaks. Reiji doesn't take breaks, dude. Like, the Shiunji family has taken breaks, but right now, like, it's still both are serialized at the same time. He's working on both, on top of being involved with the anime of the Shiunji family and the anime for Rent a Girlfriend, and this dude is still cooking and still has time for his family and all of that stuff. Reiji is actually a gift in the industry, and it kind of baffles me that no one ever gives him credit for that. Like, most of your favorite manga artists are like getting their asses fucking cooked by the industry, and this dude is not only handling 2 series, he has 2 different anime, and he's able to make art for them, and still has enough time for his family and to play fucking video games. This dude actively bitches about playing video games on his Twitter. That's how good he is at balancing and managing his time and maintaining the life that he wants. Like, this dude earned this shit, okay? And it just really upsets me that people don't give him enough credit, especially considering like Reiji actually actively puts himself out there in interviews and shit. Like, he's actively in the front center of all of this while others aren't. Shiunji Family is also Reiji's second ever anime, but with a real organized team and a structure to promote his second manga, meaning there's a very likely chance it'll get a lot more attention and a lot more sales. Whether it be the voice actors talking about it on Twitter, sharing their thoughts, people cosplaying for it. They literally had people like straight up cosplaying for it, and they're professional cosplayers. It makes a lot of sense why he didn't focus on Rent a Girlfriend here. It's already established. It's on its 4th fucking season, and yeah, while this arc is really important, the Shiunji family is brand new, and now is its time to shine. Now, there's one last thing I wanted to talk about here, which is that Aoi Yuki, the voice actress for Mami, actually had something to say in relation to the recent news. They asked her, what are your impressions of season 4 and what are the highlights? She says, your heart will race, you'll be moved, you'll be thrilled. But that alone isn't enough for you anymore, is it? Mami returns in the 4th season. We'll deliver an absolute 0 level tension directly to your heart. We hope you'll be able to fill your body with thoughts like, girls are cute and women are scary. When the 1st season was being produced, the ladies were excited, saying, we can't show Kazuya's cool side to this extent. I'm not sure what she's referring to here, maybe she's thinking to herself, but let's keep going. She says, but through season 1 to 3, he has become much more manly, and Chizuru has become even more beautiful. It's only thanks to your passionate support that we can see this side of him in the anime. We hope you'll continue to support their youth in the 4th season as well. Now, personally, I've felt that the way the anime has depicted Kazuya is somewhat lacking in a few different ways. Like, unfortunately, especially season 3, like when it's really Kazuya's time to shine, I felt like they did just kind of an okay job, especially considering the animation budget just kind of crashed and they didn't have time, and they clearly had to cut a shit ton considering they literally adapted like 60 plus chapters into 12 episodes. Chapters that are actually quite dense and have a lot in them. Like, maybe to some other anime, if it was mostly visual, that's okay, but Rent a Girlfriend actually has a lot of dialogue and a lot of depth to that dialogue. So unfortunately, you could tell when they had to cut things and they had to move things, because the manga is actually a much slower pace than the anime. So for those who have seen the anime, I do recommend you actually give the manga a shot, despite what people say, because the pacing is different and you actually get to appreciate the characters, not only visually, but actually through the dialogue much more. And with that said, I think that's a good note to end this on. I hope you guys enjoyed this video and all the updates that came with it. We'll probably be getting a few more news. I bet Ruka is probably next, and then Sumi, and then Minnie. And those are probably the visuals we'll be getting in that order. Don't forget, the anime starts airing in July 2025, just as it has for every other season. And we don't know when the second core will be airing. Hopefully it's not back to back. It'll probably be like another season later. So far, personally, I'm pretty hopeful. I'm liking what I'm seeing. I think it's pretty decent, and looking forward to what else we will be seeing soon. If you guys would like to support me, consider supporting me on Patreon, where I actually watched the first episode of the anime and compared it directly to the manga, and I do a lot of analysis and breakdown of what they did right, what they did wrong, and all sorts of stuff like that. With that said, thank you guys for watching. Remember to subscribe, the like button, the bell icon, keep up with the uploads, comments below if this stuff is interesting to you, and tell me what you think of Season 4 so far from this teaser trailer. If you're looking forward to it, if you're worried. Don't be a dick though. I don't care for that attitude in my comment section, and I'm gonna try to reason with you initially, but if you're a total dick, I'm just gonna ban you from the channel. So please just be respectful, be kind, don't talk shit about this series. If you think it's bad or you don't understand what's going on, just try to talk and be respectful, and we can talk it out, and I can maybe help you understand the story a little bit better. With that said, I've been Fate. Hope you guys enjoyed this video, and remember, let's mosey.